Rice and beans, it's a dish you'll find all around the world, from Mexico, the Caribbean, Africa, Malaysia, everywhere. And it's a fabulous, fabulous dish. You've got your carbohydrates, you've got your proteins being brought in via the beans and so on. In this dish, I'm going to use a big pile of vegetables. And again, what's great about this dish is it's one that will allow me to use all of the bits of vegetables that I might have lying in the fridge. I had a piece of celeriac, red pepper, carrots, onion. It doesn't matter. It's whatever you have. We can just cook all of these up with some leaves and things like that. It's just what I had around and allows me to clear out my fridge, make a really delicious, very balanced, great anti-inflammatory type dish. The rice I'm using, and I pre-cooked the rice in this recipe, but I'm actually using a red rice. If you can get this, it's a beautiful one to try. You'll get these in Asian shops and supermarkets and so on. It's a lovely whole grain rice. It's got a lovely chewiness to it. And just cook it in some boiling water until it becomes tender. It does take a little bit of cooking, so it's best to cook it on its own separate. I'm going to use a green poi lentil with this, although the dish would work with many other types of white lentils, red lentils, even barley or something like that. But the whole thing is, the idea is the rice, and again, rice, and although this isn't rice and beans, it's rice and lentils that I'm actually doing here. But the lentils I'll be using, the poi, are a lovely, delicious, and they'll bring the great protein into the dish. Herb spices, just a little bit of chili, garlic, very, very simple, moistened up with some passata, and I'm just going to get on with the cooking now. This dish, what I'm going to do is first add a little piece of coconut oil, about a teaspoonful, into my pan, and just heat that up nicely. And into that, I'm going to add all of my vegetables, because I'm not going to get all chefy with this. I'm going to keep it all simple. So I have my celeriac, my diced onions, my carrots, my peppers, and I'm going to add those in first. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. Again, my preference being a potassium salt here, but normal everyday salt. It's whatever is your preference. That's the one to use. And I'm going to put a little bit of black pepper in here as well. I'm just going to let that, with the lid on, start to cook away. After cooking for about 5 minutes, 5-7 minutes, just to let those start to cook through nicely. I'm now going to add into this my chili, my fennel seed, my thyme, and my garlic. And then I'm just going to cover that back up again and let it cook on for about another 5 minutes, just stirring and keeping an eye on it as it's cooking. I'm going to allow that cook over a moderate heat for about another 5 minutes there. I'm now going to add my lentils all together. Now these have been soaking overnight, but they're not cooked yet. I'm just going to give them a little bit of a stir through with the vegetables. And now I'm just going to just about cover everything with some water, about a cup of water, because you can add a little bit of water in as it's cooking. And now I'm just going to allow that all simmer together for a few minutes. And as that just comes up to a nice gentle simmer, I'm just going to add in my tomatoes next. Give that a little bit of a stir around. Now, having allowed this to simmer with the lid on for roughly 7 or 8 minutes, I'm now going to add in my passata. You can get that nice stir around. Then I'm going to actually allow this to simmer, but with the lid off, because I want to get a little bit of evaporation onto this dish as well, just before, so it gets nice and thick. So I'm going to let that simmer away until the vegetables become tender and the lentils become tender. So having allowed this to just simmer away there and just thicken up nicely, as you can see, it's just becoming a little thick, but there's still plenty of sauce in it. You can see the kind of texture here I'm looking for. And now at this point, I'm going to add in my rice. And this has been pre-cooked, and again, I'm using a red rice, but any kind of rice will do. You could use a whole grain, a brown rice. But again, I love this red rice because there's a lovely texture to it. It's a lovely whole grain. And it's just a really nice one to play around with. So as this is pre-cooked, it just needs to warm up a little bit. And now, as you can see, the whole dish is just after coming together into a lovely kind of slightly thicker mass. My lentils are nice and tender. Now, before you add any of the greens or so in, you just want to make sure everything is nicely cooked. So good to have a little taste. Make sure that your lentils and your vegetables are all as you want them. And I'm just going to let that cook on there, just with a lid on it at a very low temperature, just for a few minutes, about another 4 or 5 minutes, just to make sure everything is nice and tender. Having waited about another 5 minutes there, as you can see, and just watch once you put the rice in that you don't want your pan to start sticking on the base. And you have this very, very filling lentil and rice dish. And now just to finish, I'm going to just get my leaves, which now I've got chard and spinach here, just lovely, nice. If you have only bigger chard, just chop it up a little bit. And I'm going to just kind of push that down into it a little bit. And I'm just going to put the cover on until that becomes nice and tender. Just about 2 or 3 minutes at most. Just about 3 minutes. I'm just going to take the lid off there. As you can see that chard. Now this takes no cooking at all, those leaves and those leaves and chard. I'm just going to mix it through just a little bit. And then the very, very last thing I'm going to do is just sprinkle over my chopped coriander. And there we have it. Our rice and lentils. Loads of vegetables. Really filling. Very, very nutritious. Just going to turn that off now. And then just to serve this, let's get my little serving dish. And then it's just a case of just quite literally spooning it nice and neatly in. Pop it in the plate, allow everybody to take what they want. There we have it. Rice and beans. Or rice, excuse me, rice and lentils.